Before we dive in, if you missed the last video recapping Season 1 of Daryl Dixon, I'll drop a link in the description and tag it here.
At the end of Season 1, Daryl Dixon stood on a shoreline in France, torn between two worlds. One was a boat, promising a long-shot journey home to the family he knew. The other was a boy, Laurent, and a community that saw him as a protector, a new family he never asked for. His choice would define his future. But what Daryl didn't know was that halfway across the world, his oldest friend had already made a choice of her own. This isn't just the story of Daryl's fight for survival in France anymore. This is the book of Carol, a relentless cross-continental rescue mission that proves that for some people, family isn't just a bond. It's a promise that knows no distance. So today, we are breaking down the entire action-packed story of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, Season 2. We'll cover Carol's incredible journey, the terrifying evolution of the burner walkers, the final, brutal confrontation with Genet, and a full explanation of that jaw-dropping final scene. Buckle up. This is everything you need to know.
Our season opens not in France, but back in North America, right where we left Carol. While searching for Daryl, Carol runs into a bearded man riding his motorcycle. She learns from him that the motorcycle was traded from a repair shop up ahead. A cautious Carol doesn't rush in. Instead, she observes the situation from a hillside. After getting a rough head count, she pushes the motorcycle to the repair shop, claiming the bearded man asked her to get it fixed. A mechanic recognizes the bike at a glance. Unfortunately, no one there knows how to fix it. Carol takes the opportunity to ask if they can contact the previous owner. Maybe he knows what's wrong with the bike. Another mechanic says, his name is Daryl Dixon. The crossbow in his hand was left by him. Carol's heart sinks when she hears this, but she remains calm on the surface. When the men aren't looking, she snatches the crossbow. "Where is this Daryl you're talking about?" Noticing the contempt in the mechanic's eyes, Carol doesn't hesitate to act. In minutes, she teaches them a lesson. Now everyone is cooperating. They tell her that Daryl went to France on a walker-collecting merchant ship. Carol unceremoniously picks out a car and rushes to the dock, only to find that it has long been abandoned. The coastline has receded who knows where. Her journey to find Daryl is once again thwarted. Carol is unwilling, but not discouraged. She plans to go back to the mechanics to figure something out. Unexpectedly, a small plane flies overhead. Carol gets excited and doesn't notice the walker on the road ahead. As a result, the car loses control and crashes directly into a tree by the roadside. The huge noise attracts nearby walkers. Without even wiping the blood, Carol draws her knife and swiftly dispatches the walkers. She wants to find the plane she saw earlier. That way, there's hope of crossing the sea to France. After wandering around an abandoned park, Carol hears the familiar roar again. This time, she sees the direction the plane is landing. Under the cover of night, she quietly approaches a farm. The perimeter is fenced off with wire. Clearly, someone is living here. Carol observes from the shadows for a long time and sees only one man inside, but she still gives up the idea of forcing her way in. Following the fence to the gate, Carol is about to knock when a rabbit in front of her triggers a hidden mechanism. Carol's eyes light up. She deliberately crawls behind the mechanism's fence, pretending to have been caught in the trap. The man hears the noise and quickly runs over. Carol takes the opportunity to play the victim, saying she was just in a car accident and came here looking for medicine. The man believes her and lets Carol into the farm. However, he still has a basic level of caution. He confiscates Carol's weapons and tells her to treat her injuries and leave first thing in the morning. Outside a warehouse, Carol finally sees the plane she's been dreaming of. The farmer explains that flying is his hobby. He circles in the sky every day. Carol takes a deep breath and suppresses the urge to take it by force because this man isn't bad. On the contrary, he's a rare, kind person in this apocalypse. She tries to sound him out. With a plane just flying around here, what's the point? Haven't you thought about going further? The man firmly shakes his head because he has something more important here. Speaking of which, the farmer seems to remember something and rushes to the greenhouse next door. Carol is puzzled. Could that important thing be in there? After a long wait until the next day, while the farmer is away flying his plane, Carol curiously runs to the greenhouse, but the door is locked. Looking through the glass, there's nothing special inside. So she goes into the workshop next to it. On a shelf, she finds a map. Looking at France, where Daryl is, she wishes she could fly there immediately. Suddenly, the light above flickers. The farm's power has tripped. The electronic lock on the gate also fails. Carol is about to restore the power, but then pulls her hand back. She thinks about the mysterious greenhouse. Isn't now the perfect time to investigate? But she forgets about the large number of walkers roaming outside the farm gate. Without the protection of the iron gate, they are now pouring in. Meanwhile, Carol in the greenhouse is extremely disappointed. Besides a lot of green plants, there is only a small grave. Looking at the setup, it must be the farmer's sons. She casually picks up a music box. The music it plays reminds her of her own deceased child, Sophia. While Carol is lost in sorrow, she doesn't notice the walkers outside the greenhouse. By the time she reacts, it's too late to escape. The greenhouse has only one entrance. Carol can only keep backing away. But the number of walkers is increasing. She is finally cornered between some flower stands. Carol is panicked, but not flustered. She climbs up the metal frame and finally escapes through a skylight in the roof. Just then, the farmer returns. The two of them work together and quickly eliminate the invading walkers. The man looks at the trashed greenhouse, roars, and tells Carol to get out. The latter feels guilty and says she will leave after cleaning up the bodies. But seeing the farmer's pain, she can't help but ask about his past, because this is the foundation of friendship. Perhaps the man has been alone for too long. He actually starts to introduce himself. His name is Ash. He raised his son alone until he was 7. But due to his own negligence, his son was killed by walkers. Ash blames himself greatly for not being able to protect his son. Later, he searched everywhere for parts and assembled a plane because his son's biggest dream was to fly in the sky. Now Carol feels even more guilty. Not only did she clean up all the walkers, but before leaving, she also reinforced the greenhouse. The kind-hearted Ash no longer resents Carol. He tells her to have dinner and leave in the morning. Carol sees the rose on the table and remembers when she lost her daughter years ago, Daryl also gave her a flower to comfort her. A sad look appears on her face again. Ash senses something is wrong and asks, "Are you looking for family?" Carol slowly recounts the story of her past. The first part about her relationship with her daughter is true, but the rest is a complete fabrication. She says her daughter was taken to France by her abusive father. After the Walker outbreak, they completely lost contact. Ash understands her implied meaning. "So, you want me to fly you to France?" Carol nods. "If your son was far away and you had no news of him, wouldn't you do everything you could to find him?" Ash doesn't answer. He silently walks out of the room. The next morning, Carol prepares to leave with her weapons. Although she desperately needs the plane, Ash is a genuinely good person. She can't bring herself to force him with violence. But not long after leaving the farm, Ash catches up to her in his car. He understands the pain of losing a child and decides to help Carol find her daughter.
Back at the farm, Ash pulls out a map and plans the route to France. Carol calculates. The big shot opens a warehouse. Inside, there's a large amount of ethanol. All these years, besides farming, Carol still can't believe it. Has Ash really decided to leave this place? The latter has thought it through clearly. It's time to let everything go and get out. Otherwise, he'll rot here sooner or later. That night, the two prepare everything. They will leave first thing tomorrow morning. Suddenly, lightning flashes in the sky, striking the sparks from the wind turbine. It ignites a nearby warehouse. The noise instantly attracts a large number of walkers who pour in through the gate. Ash knows they can't wait any longer. They must leave immediately. Carol never hesitates. She guards the propeller. After starting it up, she quickly jumps into the co-pilot's seat.
As the plane accelerates, the approaching walkers are no longer a threat. With Ash's skillful maneuvering, the plane quickly soars into the sky. It's Carol's first time on a plane, and she's a bit uncomfortable. Ash tells her to open her eyes and look into the distance. The dazzling sunlight pierces through the clouds. Carol silently says in her heart, "Friend, I'm coming." But she doesn't know that Daryl in France is about to face an unprecedented crisis. Previously, at the urging of Sister Isabella, he brought the savior, Laurent, to the resistance headquarters. These past few days, he's been teaching him apocalyptic survival skills. But this behavior has drawn the disapproval of the resistance leader. The boy Laurent is the future spiritual leader. He shouldn't focus his energy on fighting and killing. Instead, he should study more philosophy and literature. Daryl feels the leader's hostility toward him. There's no reason for him to stay here any longer. Maybe it's time to go home and reunite with his friends. Unfortunately, Atlanta is thousands of kilometers away. He must find a suitable means of transport. But that afternoon, the resistance receives bad news. 3 of their outpost soldiers in Paris have lost contact. One of them is named Emile. He once helped Daryl escape from the local forces. These people have likely been retaliated against. Relying on their strong information network, the leader quickly receives confirmed news. The captured soldiers will be transferred from headquarters to another location in 2 days. When Daryl learns of this, he volunteers to join. 2 days later, the resistance team sets up an ambush on the transport vehicle's route. The original plan was to wait for the landmine to detonate and launch an attack while the enemy is in chaos. But when the transport vehicle passes, the landmine buried in the road doesn't detonate. The squad leader is about to call off the ambush, but Daryl rushes out and shoots, killing the driver of the lead vehicle. Now the other resistance fighters have to join the attack. After a fierce battle, the transport guards are wiped out. Daryl successfully rescues Emile, the black man from the outpost. The reason he risked the rescue is because he had helped him before. Just then, a sound comes from the ruins. Daryl sees a familiar face. It's the leader of the local forces, Madame Genet. He raises his rifle without hesitation. Just as he's about to pull the trigger, the landmine behind him suddenly explodes. When Daryl looks again, Madame Genet has vanished without a trace. And that's the first episode of Daryl Dixon Season 2. The story continues from the last episode. Carol and Ash are flying to France, but a fuel leak occurs mid-flight, forcing them to make an emergency landing. After getting off the plane on a deserted island, Ash is in charge of repairing the fault, while Carol prepares to clear the surrounding walkers. She's done this countless times before. She thought it would be a piece of cake. But this time, she messes up in a foreign land. Moss-covered walkers are hiding in the mud. Carol is caught off guard and knocked to the ground. Fortunately, Ash arrives in time to help. As the 2 of them are about to take down the last walker, a gunshot rings out from the distance. Turns out, 2 women have offered a helping hand. After the 4 of them meet, the women warmly introduce themselves. One is named Anne, the other is named Hannah. They were originally monitors at a weather station. After the Walker virus outbreak, they've been trapped here. It's rare to meet 2 living people. Hannah insists on inviting them to their home. Ash is concerned about the plane. After finding a roll of high-speed tape, he can't wait to go fix the broken pipe. The short-haired girl, Anne, offers to go with him. Along the way, she keeps asking about Ash's family. When she learns his only son has died, Anne immediately shows a look of pity. Ash stands there dumbfounded. He feels something isn't right. Meanwhile, Carol, who stayed at the monitoring station, is also shocked. Because she can't accept Hannah's worldview, this woman thinks humans have been poisoning the earth. Perhaps this Walker virus is the world's way of cleaning itself to save itself. Carol thinks of her dead daughter and retorts to Hannah, "Do your relatives think so too?" As they sit down to eat, Hannah asks to see her crossbow. Carol readily agrees, but secretly grips a pen in her hand. Sure enough, her fears come true. Hannah points the crossbow at Carol. She says she doesn't want to kill anyone, but she lost the coin toss earlier, so she has to follow her partner's proposal. Carol is confused. Is Anne going to kill Ash too? But Hannah shakes her head. Meanwhile, Ash is repairing the plane's pipe. Anne suddenly asks seriously, "Do you want to have more children with me?" Ash's expression, instinctively, shakes his head and refuses. Anne says, if everyone is like you, then the world is really finished. It turns out her view is completely opposite to Hannah's. That is, to save the world as much as possible. Ash doesn't want to discuss it further with her. He says he's going to find Carol. But Anne raises her rifle and says that troublesome woman is probably already dead. But she didn't expect that Carol's eloquence is as sharp as her skills. With just a few words, she makes Hannah unable to pull the trigger. Don't you want to fly out and see how far the world's self-cleansing has progressed? Just then, Anne walks in with her rifle. Seeing that Hannah hasn't made a move, she decides to kill Carol herself. But her head is directly pierced by a crossbow bolt. Hannah finally makes a decision. That is to leave the deserted island with Carol. Actually, her views are completely opposite to Anne's. It's a miracle they could live together for so many years. As they're about to reach the takeoff point, a flare shoots over and hits Hannah in the neck. It turns out Ash thought Carol was being coerced and took out his flare gun and killed her. Carol is speechless, but can't bring herself to blame him. After all, he did it for her. Now that the plane is fixed, there's no need for them to stay any longer. After a night of flying, they finally arrive over Paris, France. Carol finds a secluded farm and guides the plane to land. Ash insists on going with her to find his daughter. Carol feels guilty and decisively refuses. She doesn't want Ash to know she lied to him. Besides, the plane is here and someone needs to watch it. They agree to meet again in 2 weeks. Carol then leaves alone with her rifle. Unexpectedly, the once bustling Paris is now overgrown with weeds. Only the magnificent landmarks still stubbornly display their former glory. Passing through a dilapidated street, Carol unexpectedly hears the roar of a car. She quietly hides on the side and sees 2 soldiers get out of the car from a distance and forcibly take away a homeless person. Carol takes the opportunity to cut a hole in a sack of grain. When the military vehicle starts up again, she calmly follows the trail of scattered grain. As long as she can find living people, that's enough. She's not worried about not being able to find out Daryl's whereabouts. Carol follows the military vehicle to a square and sees that the soldiers are distributing food to the survivors. She follows suit and surrenders her weapon, successfully blending in with the homeless crowd. But Carol didn't expect that after distributing the food, the soldiers would take all the homeless people away. When she realizes something is wrong and tries to escape, she is immediately surrounded by soldiers. And so she gets on the military truck with the others. A small comfort is that Carol is sitting next to a teacher. She tells Carol, in fluent English, that these soldiers are all Madame Genet's subordinates. It is said that she wants to build a new nation here, so she values the homeless survivors very much. Soon after, everyone arrives at a heavily guarded castle. The teacher sees the car with her companion going in another direction and immediately starts shouting nervously, but she's quickly pushed back by the guards. The worldly Carol realizes that this is definitely not as simple as the teacher described. And in the castle's basement, the soldier leader reports to Madame Genet. This time, he brought back 62 people. Can we start our plan now? Madame Genet doesn't answer. Instead, she turns to a man. It's the tattooed man who once let Daryl and Laurent go. I have to say, this guy's a real man. Facing Madame Genet's torture, he stubbornly refused to reveal the location of the resistance base. And Laurent, the so-called savior at the base, has been living here for months, but he still can't fit in. Only in front of Daryl does the little boy truly let loose. Plus, Sister Isabel, who watched him grow up. When the 3 of them play together, it's like a family enjoying their time. The resistance leader sees this from a distance and immediately orders someone to call Laurent back. It's time to study literature. Daryl faintly senses the leader's hostility and suggests to Isabel, "How about we take Laurent to the Alexandria community? That's my home." But Isabel thinks this place is good for Laurent's growth and is the stage for him to show his talents. So she mercilessly rejects Daryl's proposal. But the next morning, the little boy Laurent is missing. A guard runs over and explains, "A man with a face full of tattoos knocked me out. He must have taken him." The Lawrence leader's first reaction is that Madame Genet has come for them. Daryl is extremely anxious. He immediately gathers a team and gets ready to go. They have to get to Paris before dark and rescue Laurent. While passing through a forest area, Daryl sees empty oil drums on the roadside and guesses the kidnappers are likely nearby. So he leads everyone to get out of the car and search. Following the tracks to an abandoned factory, just as they enter the gate, everyone hears a noise from upstairs. Daryl is relieved. He immediately orders everyone to surround the place in groups. Meanwhile, inside the base, the curly-haired girl, also from the convent, accidentally sees a maid preparing Laurent's favorite food. So she becomes suspicious and quietly follows her. She sees the woman sneakily go to a watchtower. After putting down the food, she quickly leaves. The curly-haired girl is suspicious and quietly enters the watchtower. In the innermost room, she sees a familiar figure. Isn't that Laurent the kidnapped from this morning? It turns out this was all set up by the resistance leader. And Daryl and the abandoned factory doesn't know he's been tricked. Right now, he's leading two men to the second floor. Unexpectedly, the resistance fighter behind him quietly draws his weapon. Daryl wants to fight back, but finds his gun has been tampered with. He's forced to engage in close combat. Just then, the ambushers in the attic also reveal themselves. Fortunately, Isabel arrives just in time with her gun for support. She recognizes that these ambushers are all from the resistance base. Until today, this is definitely not simple. And the black man searching downstairs is also ambushed by the resistance. He takes one down with his bow and arrow, but is pinned down by another. But the black man's companion just stands there, unmoved. It turns out he's been brainwashed by the resistance leader. The plan was originally just to get rid of Daryl, because the resistance is going to hold a ceremony for Laurent. The purpose is to verify if he is the true savior. Daryl, who just arrived, shouts, "What are the details of the ceremony?" The companion doesn't hide anything. They will let a walker bite Laurent. If the boy doesn't die, it proves he is the true savior. Daryl, of course, won't stand by and do nothing. He and the old black man cooperate and subdue the traitorous nun together. Isabel is equally furious. She pulls the trigger without hesitation. When the three return to the base, it's already sunset. Barging in directly won't work. Only when the tide is high and the guards withdraw do they have a chance to sneak in. Isabel would never have thought that she would personally send Laurent into the lion's den. Even if it means risking her life, she has to save him. Daryl once again makes his previous request. Then the three of us will return to Alexandria together. This time, Isabel doesn't refuse. Instead, she responds with her actions. And that's the second episode of Daryl Dixon, Season 2. Back in France, on the day of the zombie outbreak, at that time the revolutionary leader Madame Genet was just an ordinary cleaner at the Louvre. Just as she finished her work and was about to leave, the police suddenly sealed all the museum's entrances and exits. Not long after, the sounds of zombies roaring and crowds screaming came from the square. Madame Genet and her boyfriend stared at each other through the glass. They could only express their longing for each other through the phone. The next moment, a zombie suddenly pounced on her boyfriend. Madame Genet watched him die a horrible death, letting out a desperate scream. Afterwards, she returned to the exhibition hall, standing in front of the Mona Lisa, silently weeping. Now, as she and Carol stand before this masterpiece again, she can't help but feel a mix of emotions. When chaos descended, the officials protected the artworks, not human lives. This is why Madame Genet is determined to establish a new order.
Carol, who is eating, is completely confused. She can't figure out this woman's background until a soldier complains that the food is terrible and angrily knocks his tray to the floor. Madame Genet walks up with a serious expression and orders the guard to lick the food clean because she hates wasting food the most. Under the pressure of Madame Genet's strong presence, the guard finally gives in and obediently gets on the floor. At this moment, the female leader's authority is on full display. Carol now has a preliminary understanding of her. The next morning, Carol is assigned to work in the dining hall. She sees several people being pushed into a corridor. The accompanying teacher takes Carol to hide behind a door to observe. They see soldiers execute those people by shooting. Then a man in a white coat injects the bodies with an unknown drug. In just dozens of seconds, 2 of the prisoners turn into walkers and roar as they charge at the guards. The remaining prisoners don't move at all. The teacher guesses they're conducting some kind of drug test. There's a rumor going around that the Revolutionary Army is developing a drug that can make walkers go crazy and be controllable. Carol can't help but worry. What if Daryl is captured and used for experiments? So she abandons her usual caution. While delivering food, she asks everyone she meets, "Have you seen an American named Daryl?" Until she meets the heavily tortured tattooed man. He says he let Daryl go. Carol tearfully says that she is Daryl's long-lost sister. She mentions several of his hidden features, finally gaining the tattooed man's trust. He says Daryl is in a castle on the Normandy coast. Carol gets the specific route from the teacher and plans to set out to find him tonight. The teacher refuses Carol's invitation to go with her because she still has to stay and look for her companion. After the two say goodbye, Carol knocks out a guard under the cover of night. But after searching around, she doesn't find the car keys. Forced to do so, she has to choose a white horse as her getaway vehicle. But just as she escapes the camp gate, Carol is blocked by a large group of guards. It turns out they were already lying in wait here, and the one who betrayed Carol's whereabouts was the teacher who was looking for her companion. Sure enough, there is no trust in the zombie apocalypse. Carol is annoyed, but not angry, because she herself is full of lies. Facing Madame Genet's interrogation, Carol immediately starts to act. The reason she's been looking for Daryl is because she has an irreconcilable hatred for him. Madame Genet is a talented person. She greatly admires Carol's courage and resilience and decides to give her a chance for revenge. The teacher has already revealed Daryl's hiding place. Tomorrow, she will send troops to surround the resistance. Then Carol can kill Daryl with her own hands. At dawn, the Revolutionary Army is ready to set off. Looking at the dilapidated Louvre outside, Madame Genet tells Carol beside her, after the zombie outbreak, she stayed in the palace for a whole week. Having experienced the despair of the apocalypse and witnessed human greed, she feels it her duty to make the world a better place. And this zombie apocalypse is the perfect opportunity for her to realize her ambitions. Carol doesn't say a word. Instead, she stares blankly at the walking dead in the square. The scene shifts to the Resistance's fortress. The curly-haired girl, because she stumbled upon the leader's plot, is imprisoned in a remote courtyard. But she has lived here for a few months after all. After easily tricking the guard at the gate, the curly-haired girl quickly arrives at the central square. She sees many people setting up the scene and guesses that the leader's so-called proof ceremony will be held today. The woman shouts anxiously, "The leader is going to kill Laurent." This is basically a death wish. She is quickly cornered on the city wall by the guards. The curly-haired girl fights desperately, but accidentally falls from the wall and dies on the spot. The leader feigns a look of sorrow and announces that the proof ceremony will proceed as planned. Meanwhile, Daryl and his group have finally waited for high tide. Confirming that all the guards have withdrawn, they sneak up to the city wall unnoticed. Led by the old black man, Daryl and Isabel sneak into the city. And now the proof ceremony has begun.
The leader stands in the middle of the crowd, speaking eloquently. He will use practical actions to prove that the faith and beliefs everyone holds are so correct. After saying this, Laurent is brought to the center of the square, surrounded by several people. He was previously given a sedative drug and now looks a bit dazed. This is the leader's way of ensuring he doesn't cause trouble, because what they are about to show is Laurent's immunity to the zombie virus. Under the expectant gazes of the crowd, a zombie in a cloak walks out. After taking off the hood, it is revealed that the newcomer is the newly dead curly-haired girl. Isabel, hidden in the crowd, is stunned. Fortunately, Daryl acts in time, killing the zombie with one arrow and drawing all the hatred. The leader deploys a large number of guards to capture him. Isabel and the old black man take advantage of the chaos to take away the dazed Laurent. In a moment, they meet up with Daryl at the designated point. But the searching guards are countless. The four of them can only hide in a remote stone room. Daryl knows that if they continue like this, they will be found sooner or later. So he uses the same trick again. He decides to run out and attract the enemy's attention. After arranging a meeting point with Laurent outside the city, Daryl strides out. This time, without the cover of the crowd chaos, it won't be as easy for him to escape. Fortunately, Daryl's combat skills are top tier. Anything in his hands can become a weapon to defeat the enemy in one move. However, human strength has its limits. Daryl eventually runs out of stamina and is cornered in an alley by the guards. Although his sacrifice attracted many guards, Isabel's plan to leave the city is not going smoothly, because at every interval, they encounter fixed guard posts and patrolling guards.
To avoid alerting the enemy, Isabel, who is bringing up the rear, is forced to hide in a room next to the corridor. Meanwhile, Daryl has been beaten and is unable to move. The leader arrogantly walks up. He says that violence cannot solve everything. To protect the castle's safety, one must mobilize the residents' faith. Therefore, Laurent's existence is crucial. Daryl smiles sarcastically. If the ritual fails, Laurent will be completely dead. But the leader doesn't care. If the ritual fails, he'll just find someone else and try again. Once this is said, Daryl is even less likely to reveal Laurent's whereabouts. The leader can't do anything about this stubborn mule and can only have him imprisoned for now. Daryl keeps glancing at the keys on the table. No matter the circumstances, he's not one to give up easily. But before his escape plan can even be implemented, Isabel is also pushed into the prison. Daryl smiles wryly and shakes his head. He underestimated the guard strength of this fortress. Learning that the old black man has successfully escaped with Laurent, Daryl feels a little better. Sensing Isabel's low spirits, he starts describing the beauty of the Alexandria community. There live many people with different personalities, but friends you can trust with your life. Resources are not abundant, but enough for everyone to eat and wear warm clothes. After Laurent goes to school, he will take Isabel for a walk by the river, enjoying the countless fireflies flying in the sky. Isabel feels that kind of life is like a dream. Daryl reaches out his strong hand as if to give her great confidence. But they don't know that Madame Genet's revolutionary army has already arrived at the castle. Not far away, Carol looks behind her with some confusion. She sees a large number of people getting out of the trucks. Attacking the castle should be the job of armed personnel. What use are these ordinary people? Meanwhile, the resistance leader in the castle has already entered the prison. Since Daryl is being stubborn and won't say anything, he decides to start with Isabel. Daryl is anxious, but his left hand is restrained, and he can only watch as Isabel is taken away. Carol outside the city is in the crowd. Watching the eloquent Madame Genet, the more she thinks, the something feels wrong. Remembering the scene from yesterday of the man in the white coat injecting people with the walker drug, Carol is startled. She finally understands the purpose of this group of ordinary people, so she quickly steps forward and reminds Madame Genet, "Isn't this too cruel?" Madame Genet's face darkens. She has been preparing for this for months.
She immediately orders Carol to be arrested. It turns out Madame Genet already knew she and Daryl were, "Since you won't serve me, then you can become a walker with them." And that's the third episode of Daryl Dixon, Season 2. The story continues from the previous episode. Carol is mercilessly pushed into the crowd by Madame Genet. She had a bad feeling early on and instinctively backed away. Sure enough, not long after, a Gatling gun reveals its menacing fangs. The spewing flames continuously reap the lives of the crowd. Although Carol luckily escaped, the thugs want to inject each body with the virus drug. Carol, who was playing dead, quickly pulls out the needle. She wants to find a chance to escape, but the bodies next to her start to stir. Clearly, the virus drug is taking effect. Madame Genet plans to use the tattooed man to lure the walkers into the city. Carol seizes the opportunity. In one swift move, she drags the driver out of the car. She floors the gas pedal, driving the tattooed man towards the fortress. The resurrected walkers follow closely behind the car. Carol is anxious because the castle gate is closed. Fortunately, Madame Genet was prepared. A mortar shell accurately hits the city gate. Carol knows she's being used as a pawn, but can only brace herself and charge into the city. Seeing a large number of walkers following her, she doesn't dare to delay. She quickly cuts the iron chains on the tattooed man's hands. Unexpectedly, he is also a tough guy. He offers to stay behind to cover their retreat, saying, "This is all for Laurent." Carol is still wondering who this Laurent is, but her actions don't stop. She kills guards while searching for Daryl. Meanwhile, the resistance leader, Losang, is still trying to get Laurent's whereabouts. Isabel knows he doesn't see Laurent as a successor, but as a tool to consolidate his position, so she clenches her jaw and doesn't say a word. Just then, someone comes to report the Revolutionary Army has broken in. Isabel seizes the opportunity to try and kill Losang, but completely enrages him. He grabs an iron rod and stabs it fiercely into Isabel's abdomen. After Losang and his men leave, Isabel miraculously opens her eyes. Perhaps it was some obsession in her heart that made her force her broken body to stand up. Isabel walks step by step into the chaotic street. Suddenly, a zombie roars and pounces on her. But the next moment, it is knocked down. It was Carol, who happened to be passing by. Although she kills without mercy, when she sees the harmless and weak, she still offers a helping hand. And it is this act of kindness that allows her to find out Daryl's whereabouts. A guard trying to escape the walkers rushes into the prison. But he never expected that a man more terrifying than walkers was locked up here. The newly freed Daryl, like a god of war, charges straight into the chaotic crowd. When he takes down the last guard, Carol's figure stands right in front of him. Daryl thinks he's seeing things. Until the two embrace tightly, he finally confirms he's not dreaming. Carol doesn't have time to reminisce. Instead, she takes her to Isabel.
Seeing his dying lover, Daryl is so nervous he's incoherent. Isabel begs him to take care of Laurent. After getting a positive answer, a peaceful smile appears on her face. She softly says, "The fireflies are beautiful." Isabel stops breathing completely. Even though Daryl is used to life and death, at this moment, his face is still covered in tears. Carol gently comforts him. After getting much difficulty getting Daryl out of the castle, she says she has a plane ready. They can go home anytime. But Daryl says it's not time yet. He has to find the boy Laurent. Meanwhile, the resistance leader Losang is ultimately outnumbered and becomes Madame Genet's prisoner. It turns out he also knew that Laurent was immune to the zombie virus. Last night's operation, besides capturing Daryl, was largely for the boy Laurent. Losang smiles wryly and shakes his head. He originally thought Laurent's escape was God protecting him from his own harm. Now it seems God is protecting Laurent from Madame Genet's harm. Madame Genet smiles. "If I find the boy, it proves that God is on my side." Meanwhile, Daryl has taken Carol to the pre-arranged meeting point. Unfortunately, the boy Laurent is not here. Judging by the campfire, they seem to have left long ago. Carol tells him not to panic. As long as they follow the tracks, they will surely meet up with old Laurent. At this point, Daryl has finally regained some composure. Looking at the unique castle, a French word comes out of his mouth. Isabel taught it to him. It means a place that makes you see things differently. Carol suddenly feels like she's in a dream. Two familiar people have actually met in a completely strange place. They track the traces while talking about their experiences during this time. Unconsciously, the two walk into a tree-lined path. The roadside is lined with various zombies, but Daryl and Carol are already used to such intimidating tactics. Not long after, they arrive at a human residence. They search it inside and out. Finally, in the basement, they meet an elderly couple having a meal. It turns out just the day before, the boy Laurent happened to pass by here. With his incredible charisma, he quickly won the friendship of this elderly couple. Besides Daryl, the old lady even knows Sister Isabel. But it's too late today. Daryl decides to go after Laurent at dawn. Unfortunately, the old car in the yard hasn't been used for too long. It needs a few key parts replaced. The old man beats his chest and guarantees that they can definitely find replacement parts in town. Meanwhile, Carol is helping the old lady make lunch. The latter mysteriously says Laurent asserts that Daryl actually loves Carol, but she's afraid that if she says it, she won't be able to leave the community. Seeing Carol try to explain, the old lady quickly interrupts. Actually, love isn't as complicated as you think. It turns out she and the old man are not married. It's just that all of their respective family members have died. So the two of them followed their hearts and lived happily together. Carol and Daryl both show looks of envy. Not long after, they push the old man to the small town. In the yards on both sides of the road, there are many walkers trapped. The old man greets them one by one. Unfortunately, only the elderly survived in the small town. He can't give his friends a proper burial. Not long after, the three arrive at an open yard. There is still a car mechanic surviving here. They have all the parts they need. Daryl can't wait to go home. He wishes he could leave immediately. Find Laurent. The old lady asks Carol to help get something from the warehouse. But seeing the wooden door, she once again remembers her tragically deceased daughter. The old lady seems to have noticed something. After learning about Carol's experience, she quickly comforts her. Everything will pass, because that's how she got through it. Carol feels refreshed, and the shackles in her heart are slowly fading. When she returns to the car, she uncharacteristically argues with Daryl. The old man passing by feels the two are like an old couple. Just then, a military vehicle pulls up in the distance. He tells Daryl to quickly hide in the car. Through the car window, the guards on the military vehicle seem to be asking about someone. Only when the old lady brings out a pot of food does the guard drive away, cursing. Carol guesses that group of people came for Daryl. She warns him that no matter what, they have to leave first thing tomorrow morning. She casually pulls out an exquisite doll. This is what Carol brought before she left. Judith asked her to give it to Daryl. Only then does he realize that there are many people back home that he cares about. The next morning, Daryl and Carol finish packing and are ready to go. But the old man insists that they have breakfast before leaving. Unable to refuse his kindness, they still sit down at the dining table. The old lady specially takes out her cherished truffles. This is a precious thing in the apocalypse. Daryl heeds Carol's warning. He quickly eats a few bites and prepares to leave. But he hears the roar of a car outside the window. The two of them instinctively try to escape, but they see the old man raise his rifle. It turns out he had already tipped off the Revolutionary Army. He just wanted a better life for his lover, but the old lady doesn't buy it at all. She leads Carol and the other man into the warehouse to hide. When Madame Genet and her men burst in, she sees 4 plates on the table. She immediately guesses that Daryl is nearby. But the two killing machines, Carol and Daryl, won't sit back and wait. While the guards are searching, they sneak around to the car to get their weapons.
And Madame Genet here is gradually losing patience. She prepares to use the old lady's life to force the old man to find Daryl. But just then, Carol takes the initiative to attack. Several guards charge toward Daryl's ambush position, and he easily breaks into the room. The old man holds the old lady motionless. Carol doesn't have time for them. Instead, she sneaks up to the second-floor attic. In a moment of carelessness, she is cornered by Madame Genet. Carol says, "You're on the wrong path." Madame Genet's a little crazy. She scolds him, "You have no idea what I've been through." Watching her lover being bitten to death by zombies, local officials disregarded the lives of residents to protect cultural relics. At that time, she had already made up her mind to build a whole new world. After saying this, she signals her men to kill Carol. But Daryl appears like a godsend, instantly turning the situation around. Carol doesn't waste words. She immediately grabs the injector gun and shoots it at Madame Genet. This once invincible leader finally dies from her own virus drug. When Daryl returns to the first-floor hall, he finds the old lady has been shot and killed. The two of them silently bury her. The old man next to them sobs uncontrollably. This punishment is perhaps more painful than killing him. After packing their supplies, Daryl says he just wants to go home as soon as possible. The longer he stays here, the more uncomfortable he feels. Carol returns with a kind smile. The next moment, she drives away from the cottage. The walkers on both sides of the road are still roaring, but the people inside are long gone. That night, the news of Madame Genet's death reaches the castle. The Revolutionary Army sub-leader finds Losang. They can't survive with only soldiers, and what Losang lacks is armed forces. And just like that, the Revolutionary Army and the Resistance merge into one. Losang names it the Union of Hope. The first mission of the new organization is to find the boy Laurent with all their might. And that's Daryl Dixon, Season 2, Episode 4. Daryl and Carol, in search of the missing Laurent, follow his tracks to the center of Paris. Since they're passing through, Carol thinks they should first check on the pilot Ash. He's their key to getting home. There can't be any mishaps. When the two arrive at the abandoned farm in the suburbs, they immediately sense something is wrong. The barn doors and windows wouldn't be closed during the day. Carol goes ahead first and triggers a preset trap. After searching around inside, sure enough, there's no trace of the nuisance. However, at two other entrances, traps have caught a few walkers. Daryl takes care of them one by one. He accidentally discovers a living person among them. Carol quickly goes over to ask, only to find out that Ash left yesterday and never came back. The two of them understand. Someone must have their eye on the plane here. The traps at the entrance are fine for stopping walkers, but against sinister and malicious humans, the weak Ash can only run. But they don't know that Ash accidentally ran into a horde of walkers while escaping. He only managed to stay alive thanks to a broken-down car. Daryl suggests meeting up with Laurent first, because he has already guessed his whereabouts. Inside the outpost base in central Paris, the black man reminds his companions to be on high alert. Laurent is hiding here. There's no room for error. Suddenly, there's a knock on the heavy iron door. Everyone gathers around to see. It's the scarred, tattooed man. Laurent comes out when he hears the noise, reminding everyone that he has helped him many times. Unfortunately, the tattooed man doesn't know Daryl's whereabouts. When he escaped the Union Fortress, Daryl was still locked in the prison. Now, the tattooed man has nowhere to go because everyone he cared about is dead. Only Laurent is the only light in his dark life, but the next moment, this point of light runs into the arms of the newly arrived Daryl. Seeing his solemn expression, Laurent feels a sense of unease. Daryl calls him into a room and tells him the news of Sister Isabel's death. The little boy's face turns pale. Why are all the people who care about me dead? Daryl appears calm on the surface, but isn't his heart also in agony? He tries to push aside distractions and tells Isabel's dying wish. He wants to take Laurent to the Alexandria community in America, but the little boy refuses. He has already made new friends here and doesn't want to move somewhere else. He just hopes Daryl goes back to his own home and enjoys life. Daryl tries to persuade Laurent again, but he just turns his head away, ending the conversation. From the looks of it, what he just said was clearly just an excuse. Meanwhile, Carol is touring the outpost base. Everyone here seems very busy, as if they have endless work to do. Only the dejected Daryl seems out of place. Carol guesses that he was rejected by Laurent, but life must go on.
They must find Ash as soon as possible and go home. The old black man brings bad news. They searched the surrounding area extensively but found no trace of Ash. Daryl thinks of a place. That's where all the news converges. Not long after, everyone arrives at the underground bar. This was originally built by Laurent's father. After his unfortunate death, his girlfriend, Melly, successfully took over. Daryl skips the pleasantries and gets straight to the point, asking about Ash's whereabouts. Melly is indeed well informed. Not only does she know that Madame Genet was killed by Daryl, but she also guessed that Carol came to France by plane. She sent people to the farm to inquire before, but unfortunately no one was there. Just then, Carol sees the oil drum on the bar. She remembers this is Ash's thing. Melly quickly calls her assistant over to ask and finds out the oil drum was scavenged from Madame Genet's old lair. Daryl's heart sinks. He immediately drives over there. They both have a strong impression of this place. The once impenetrable military fortress, with the fall of Madame Genet, has now become a gathering place for zombies. No wonder even Melly's men dare to come here to collect supplies. Daryl walks into the familiar underground prison. All the prisoners inside have turned into zombies. Carol checks them one by one, and the heavy stone in her heart gradually lifts, because Ash is not among them. Just then, through the window, Daryl sees a car surrounded by walkers. He guesses there are survivors hiding inside. The two are fearless. With their weapons, they charge straight into the walker horde. Soon, they carve out a path, quickly get into the car, and sure enough, they see the unconscious Ash. After a lot of effort to wake him up, unfortunately, they've missed the best time to escape. Seeing more and more walkers gathering, Daryl is panicked but not flustered. While searching for ammo in the car, he finds several tubes of zombie virus agent. Although he doesn't know its specific use, he decides to give it a try. Forcing open the car's sunroof, Daryl takes up the machine gun and fires at the walkers. After using up all the agent, he doesn't have time to observe the effect. He immediately retreats into the car and waits quietly. Not long after, the walkers outside have a chain reaction and start to explode one after another. While Daryl and Carol are stunned, a crazed walker suddenly charges into the car. The two of them work together to take it down and help Ash out of the car. Seeing the ground covered in the remains of walkers, Daryl marvels at the unexpectedly powerful drug. Unfortunately, Madame Genet won't be able to enjoy it. After returning to the abandoned farm, Carol helps Ash to the bed to rest. He was just dehydrated from not drinking water for a long time, which caused him to collapse. He'll be fine after some rest. Daryl looks around and finds that the plane's fuel has been taken. It seems he'll have to go to the bar again. Carol offers to stay and look after Ash. She still has a hurdle to overcome in her heart. That is, how to explain her lies to him. Carol musters up the courage to speak, but Ash interrupts. He thinks the daughter Carol was looking for is gone, and starts to comfort him instead. This makes Carol feel even more guilty. Meanwhile, Daryl has arrived at the underground bar. He is about to ask Melly for fuel when she takes him to Laurent. Daryl is confused. Why is he here? After asking, he finds out that while he and Carol were out scouting, the Union leader, Losang, suddenly brought his men to the outpost. This was originally his territory, so he of course guessed Laurent might be hiding here. The residents pretend not to know anything and state that they will cooperate with Losang to find Laurent. Unfortunately, the lie is quickly exposed by the Rubik's Cube on the table. Losang knows this is Laurent's stationery. He immediately becomes hostile and has his men search forcefully. As their hiding place is about to be exposed, the old black man immediately holds a guard hostage. Although there are no more aggressive actions, it successfully attracts everyone's attention. He denounces in front of everyone that Losang is no longer the benevolent leader he once was. He won't even spare a child. But Losang insists he's not wrong. In this world full of crises, everyone must regain confidence and hope. Belief that God has not abandoned humanity,
and Laurent's existence is the best proof. The old black man immediately retorts, "But you have already lost Laurent. That means God is not on your side." This statement is echoed by all the camp residents. Lo Sang's entire face is contorted with anger. His obsession with catching Laurent deepens, and the tattooed man sneaks out of the camp with Laurent and runs to the underground bar to meet up with Daryl. Learning that Lo Sang hasn't given up on Laurent and has even absorbed the remnants of Madame Genet's forces, one can imagine Daryl's anxiety, so he once again persuades Laurent to go to America with him. There's no place for him here anymore, but Laurent still refuses. Daryl is so angry he almost spits blood. He wants to know the real reason. Laurent is also pushed to his limit. "Everyone I love dies because of me." He doesn't want Daryl to be the next one. Just then, a commotion erupts downstairs. The persistent Lo Sang has found them. Melly quickly moves Daryl and the others, but accidentally reveals their position. Lo Sang directly charges into the office with his men. After some searching, they find a secret door behind a mural. Daryl must have escaped through here. Lo Sang leads his guards in to search. Unexpectedly, it's a secret passage from the last century. The walls are made of stacked bones, giving off a creepy and terrifying aura. Daryl senses the pursuers are closing in. He decides to split up with the tattooed man. Lo Sang, arriving at the fork in the road, took the bait. He separates half of his men to the other side. Daryl thinks for a moment and hides Laurent in a secret compartment. The tunnel is dimly lit. This is the perfect opportunity for him to show his skills. At this moment, Daryl is like the Grim Reaper in the dark. Every move he makes takes a life. By the time Lo Sang reacts, he's already a lone commander. But this leader hasn't recognized the situation. He only knows a few stick-fighting moves. He actually chooses to fight Daryl one-on-one. The result is no surprise. He is beaten to a pulp by Daryl. And the tattooed man on the other path doesn't disappoint. He takes out the pursuing guards one by one.
Finally, he throws the unconscious deputy. Perhaps because he was concerned about Laurent's safety, he didn't finish them off one by one. He spared the female deputy's life. After the three successfully meet up, Millie personally delivers the fuel for the plane. Seeing that he's about to go home, Daryl decides to try and persuade Laurent one last time. "Isabel's death had nothing to do with you. This is not a burden you should bear at your age. If you really want to do something for her, then fulfill her dying wish. Go to America." The little boy is finally persuaded and gets in the car with Daryl. Meanwhile, Peril at the farm finally decides to confess to Ash. She didn't come to France to find her daughter. She died 12 years ago. Ash collapses upon hearing this. He thinks Carol is using her dead daughter to gain sympathy. Otherwise, he wouldn't have abandoned everything to come to France. Just then, Daryl arrives with Laurent. The little boy is excited to see the plane. But Ash immediately throws cold water on him. This plane can only carry 3 or more people. This is the 5th episode of Daryl Dixon Season 2. Ash's resentment towards Carol hasn't subsided. He says coldly, "The plane's refueling hose is missing." Daryl follows him to the underground parking lot. While he's dismantling parts, he seemingly unintentionally brings up Laurent's background. Learning that the boy's parents are dead, Ash's expression is complicated. If his son were still alive, he would be about the same age as Laurent. Unconsciously, he walks towards an iron gate. Daryl yanks him back with force. Inside the iron fence, there is a large number of zombies. Ash's back is soaked in sweat. After this incident, his attitude has improved somewhat. He promises to safely deliver Carol and Laurent to the Alexandria community. Suddenly, footsteps are heard outside. It is the old black man and the tattooed man. They bring unfortunate news. The Union Army is still relentless, still hunting for Laurent. It turns out that earlier this morning, the old black man led a team out to search for supplies, leaving one person behind to keep watch. He and the tattooed man walked into the abandoned hospital. Although there were walkers, they were all old and weak,
posing no threat at all. The two gradually let their guard down, but they are ambushed and captured by a group of soldiers. The Union Army's squad leader walks out from a side door. He wants to know where the plane is hidden. The tattooed man is stubborn and refuses to say anything. The squad leader plans to use the old black man's life as a threat. Fortunately, at the critical moment, a few arrows fly in from the distance. It turns out their companion, who was keeping watch outside, has come to support them. The old black man takes the opportunity to fight back and successfully repels the guards. But he doesn't know that the bar owner, Melly, is also being blocked by the Union Army. Stand up. This time, the one leading the team is Losong's female deputy. She is much more ruthless than her predecessor. If Melly doesn't reveal the plane's location, he will kill everyone she knows. Melly maintains her cold demeanor and says she can take them to the plane. After it's done, Laurent will belong to the Union Army. She only wants the plane and the pilot. The female deputy scoffs. Businessmen are truly driven by profit. Meanwhile, Carol on the other side receives a warning from the old black man. She prepares to take off immediately, but Ash insists on tuning it first. If something goes wrong in the air, it'll be too late for everything. Meanwhile, Melly has already brought the female deputy to the vicinity of the farm. He knows a shortcut to flank them. This time, the Union Army has gone all out. Melly is in high spirits, leading a large number of soldiers into the gymnasium. But when he sees the damaged mural, he immediately remembers that Laurent once said that the Eiffel Tower would regain its beauty. Melly's heart is touched again. Actually, he has long been tired of this broken world. At the repeated urging of the female deputy, Melly leads everyone into the underground parking lot. She is the local boss here. Of course, she knows what's hidden inside the fence. Sure enough, not long after, the low growl of zombies is heard. The unsuspecting soldiers are pounced on one by one. In the chaotic and confined space, this group of people simply cannot resist the ferocious zombies. After losing more than half their men, they finally retreat outside the iron gate. Unfortunately, Melly has no escape. She is literally drowned in the zombie horde. The female deputy is not much better off. Her arm is bitten by a zombie. Just as she is desperate and helpless, the roar of a plane is heard in the distance. The female deputy, as if grasping at a straw, immediately leads her men over. Coincidentally, Ash on this side has just finished debugging. Just as he's about to take off, the vanguard of the Union Army arrives. Daryl doesn't have time to say goodbye. He urges Carol to get on the plane quickly. The two exchange glances. Their feelings for each other are clear. Daryl pushes the iron frame to the middle of the road. He and the old black man and a few others use it as cover, becoming the greatest guarantee for the plane's departure. The female deputy here is anxious.
She orders her men to flank them. At this point, the plane is still taxiing on the ground, unable to avoid any attacks. Daryl knows the danger. He forces himself to calm down. After aiming at the enemy, he pulls the trigger cleanly and decisively. But before Ash can rejoice, an SUV rushes onto the runway, heading straight for the plane. Daryl raises his rifle again. But he's out of bullets. The man is anxious. Just as the plane is about to be hit, the SUV suddenly swerves off the runway. It turns out Carol had jumped off the plane earlier and sniped the car's driver. Daryl doesn't blame her for acting on her own. Watching the plane slowly ascend, he silently waves, saying a final goodbye to Laurent. Meanwhile, the Union Army on the other side also stops attacking. There's no point in fighting anymore. The female deputy looks as if she's lost her soul. She slowly raises the gun to her head. The once invincible Union Army is now completely disintegrated. The old black man leads everyone to a secluded community. He knows a guide who claims to be able to cross the strait to England. Daryl decides to go and have a look. At least it's closer to America. Maybe they can find a way home. Not long after, the guide the old black man mentioned arrives as promised. It turns out there's an underwater tunnel between the two places. As long as they bribe the guards at the checkpoint with supplies,
they can pass through freely. Seeing that it's almost dark, everyone decides to rest here for the night and set off again. The tattooed man has no ties in France. Even his only brother is dead. He plans to go on an adventure with Daryl. Daryl rarely explains himself, but in fact, his brother was not killed by him, but by a little girl pretending to be blind. The tattoo man is filled with anger. It was that girl before who said that Daryl killed his brother, and this is why he rushed into the convent and drove Isabel away. Daryl complains inwardly and turns to walk in another direction. He sees Carol looking dejected in a corner. It turns out he's thinking of his dead daughter again. But what's incredibly heartbreaking is that he's actually forgotten what his daughter looked like. Daryl gives him a hug. The past is the past. We still have to move forward. The next morning, everyone drives to the westernmost coast of France. The old black man takes Daryl to the tunnel entrance. He originally wanted to leave with him too, but the old black man can't let go of the girlfriend he met. He can only say a tearful goodbye to his former comrade. Daryl is typically cold on the outside, but warm on the inside. He looks back every 3 steps. He walks into the underwater tunnel with everyone else. The female guide introduces to everyone. When the zombie virus first broke out, the British military sealed this place off. After walking for about a few kilometers, everyone finally reaches the checkpoint. From afar, the guide starts to identify himself, but after shouting for a long time, there's no response. When they get closer, they realize this checkpoint has fallen. All the guards and passing travelers have turned into zombies. Daryl turns on the generator and sees that all the soldiers killed each other. Not far away, 2 masks are scattered. This makes everyone even more confused. They can't figure out what happened. Daryl suggests they leave this place as soon as possible. But just as they pass the guard post, everyone stops in their tracks. The tunnel ahead is glowing with a strange light. Daryl guesses it's caused by some kind of microorganism, just like how fireflies glow. Everyone proceeds cautiously. Suddenly, the tattoo man stumbles. The guide behind him falls to the ground. The noise startles the nearby walkers. Everyone is forced to fire back. Daryl soon discovers that everyone's vision, including his own, is becoming blurry. It turns out, when inhaled, this glowing microorganism also has a hallucinogenic effect. No wonder the guards at the checkpoint killed each other. Unfortunately, Daryl found out too late. The tattoo man, in a daze, sees his tragically deceased brother. He actually believes Daryl is the murderer. Carol's performance is even worse. In a daze, she sees the figure of her dead daughter. She just stands there, waiting for the zombies to approach. Meanwhile, Daryl on the other side doesn't want to fight with the tattoo man anymore, so he shouts his name loudly. The tattoo Lotus pauses for a moment. He sees his younger brother waving at him, so he abandons Daryl and charges forward without a second thought. Daryl doesn't have time to stop him. Thinking of the gas mask at the outpost, it's the only way to resist the microorganisms. Daryl just bends down and is suddenly knocked to the ground by a shovel. Unexpectedly, it was the 2 guides who attacked him. Because there are only 2 gas masks here, at this point, Daryl has almost no strength left. All he can do now is wait for death. Fortunately, Carol on the other side doesn't disappoint. When the walker gets close, her vision clears a little bit. Realizing the danger, she immediately pulls out her dagger, but when only one was left, Carol hesitates to strike, because this walker looks exactly like her. When she comes to her senses again, the walker has disappeared. In its place is the figure of her daughter, Sophia. Carol finally sees her daughter's face clearly. She wants to leave with Sophia, but the girl firmly refuses. Carol, with teary eyes, knows this is her saying goodbye to her past self. Meanwhile, Daryl, who was waiting to die, suddenly sees Isabel walking towards him, dressed exactly as she was when they first met. Isabel says, "You shouldn't die here. Don't forget your promise to me." The image of Laurent flashes through Daryl's mind. A sudden surge of strength fills his body. He picks up the shovel and knocks the guide next to him. His girlfriend tries to help, but is immediately knocked to the ground by Daryl. In the end, he doesn't forget to finish her with a shot. Putting on the mask, he takes a few deep breaths. Isabel's figure appears again. She says goodbye to Daryl, and then completely disappears into the darkness. Daryl sees specks of light flashing around him, just like fireflies dancing in the air. Until Carol walks out of the darkness, he finally snaps out of it. She hands him a mask. The two look at each other. No words are exchanged. They just walk deeper into the tunnel. And that's the entire story of Daryl Dixon Season 2. Judging by the pace, Daryl's journey in France should be over. The boy Laurent went to America, while Sister Isabel will forever remain deep in his heart. All his ties in France have been completely severed. Season 3's content should be his and Carol's adventure in the UK. All right, that's all for today. If you enjoyed this, please stay tuned. See you next time.